The vast emptiness of space stretched before the Elysium, its sleek metal frame cutting through the dark void like a solitary wanderer. Earth was long behind them now, a faded memory in the rear view of a dying world. The planet that had once given birth to humanity's most brilliant minds, its greatest triumphs and unspeakable failures, now stood silent, a broken relic. Its cities, once teeming with life, were abandoned, left to the rust and decay of time. The once towering skyscrapers now crumbled beneath the weight of neglect, and the endless skies above were empty, save for the occasional whisper of forgotten satellites. Earth had become a place of quiet mourning, its legacy now a ghost that wandered the galaxy. The colonies scattered across the stars, however, had become humanity's last refuge. Fragments of a once great civilization, each colony clung to life. On the fringes of galactic society, their technology was rudimentary at best. Starships that ran on outdated engines, colonies built on planets that lacked the resources to grow, and people who no longer believed in the promises of a brighter tomorrow. They survived, but survival felt hollow. They were a testament to human resilience, yes, but also to the failure of those who had once believed Earth would always hold dominion over the stars. Emma Reed, captain of the Elysium, watched the distant star systems through the ship's panoramic window, reflecting on what could have been. "Captain," the voice of her first officer, Lieutenant Harlow, interrupted her thoughts. "We've received a message from the Alliance. The mission parameters are confirmed. We're on track." Emma nodded, her eyes still fixed on the black expanse. "We need this mission to succeed," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Humanity needs this. Her crew had become her family in the years after Earth's collapse. They looked to her for hope, for guidance. But Emma's own heart was heavy with doubt. Once, she had been a commander, a part of Earth's proud military. But now, there was no war to fight, no battle to win. The enemy was time itself, and the question gnawed at her every day: could humanity rise from the ashes, or had they already been forgotten? The Elysium glided through the void, toward a galaxy where humanity's influence had diminished to nearly nothing. A scattered few still remembered Earth's once thriving power, but most of the galaxy's inhabitants saw humanity as nothing more than a curiosity, primitive, weak, and inconsequential. Earth had lost its place in the stars, overshadowed by alien species that had evolved far beyond humanity's capacity for growth. The colonies were isolated, cut off by light years of cold space, their people struggling to survive in a harsh, uncaring universe. The gap between Earth's once glorious future and the present was a chasm too wide to bridge, but Emma, and the few who shared her resolve, held on to a fragile hope. If the mission succeeded, maybe they could prove humanity was more than a faded memory. Their mission was simple, or so it seemed at first: deliver a high-powered engine to an interstellar alliance. The engine had been crafted from the finest technology humanity could muster, a marvel of human ingenuity capable of revolutionizing space travel. Its potential was enormous, potentially a game-changer for intergalactic politics. But Emma had a nagging suspicion. They were mere messengers, delivering a piece of technology with no understanding of its true value. She had seen how technology, in the wrong hands, could destroy civilizations. But what if their mission didn't just offer a chance for redemption, but unlocked something far more dangerous? As they approached the uncharted region of space, a region that had never been mapped by human eyes, Emma felt the weight of uncertainty pressed down on her chest. The area was known for its cosmic anomalies, strange phenomena that had puzzled even the most advanced alien civilizations. No one had dared explore it before, and now the Elysium was about to plunge into its depths. The air aboard the ship was thick with tension. Harlow stood beside her, staring at the same vast unknown. "This is uncharted, Captain," he said, his voice edged with concern. "We don't know what we're walking into." Emma swallowed, forcing herself to look away from the abyss outside. We don't have a choice. We're carrying the future of humanity with us. The journey into the unknown had begun. Emma knew that this mission could either save humanity or doom it. The path forward was shrouded in mystery, and every star they passed felt like a test of their resolve. With each passing moment, the danger grew, but so did the possibility of something greater than they could imagine. As the ship pushed further into the void, Emma's thoughts drifted back to Earth. They had nothing left to cling to but their will to survive. Earth's history was fading, lost to time. But perhaps this engine, this piece of humanity's most advanced technology, could reignite the spark that had once made them powerful. But the deeper they ventured, the more Emma feared what lay ahead. The unknown wasn't just dangerous. It was a doorway to something neither humanity nor the galaxy could comprehend. Could they be ready for whatever came through? "Captain," Harlow spoke again, breaking through her thoughts, "the engine, it's more than we thought. If we make it to the Alliance, it could change everything. But if we're not careful, it could also destroy everything." Emma paused, her mind racing. They had ventured too far into the unknown to turn back now. The engine might bring them salvation, but at what cost? The line between salvation and destruction had never been thinner. As the Elysium continued on, its path into the uncharted, Emma knew one thing for sure. This mission, this engine, was not just a chance for humanity's survival. It was a test, one that would determine whether humanity could rebuild itself and secure its place in the galaxy, or whether it would fade into the forgotten corners of space, a relic of a once great civilization. "Prepare for the unknown," Emma whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The fate of humanity was in her hands now, and she was ready to face whatever the galaxy had in store. The Elysium coasted through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming softly, barely cutting. Through the silence of the unknown, before them lay the Tizar region, a swath of uncharted space filled with cosmic anomalies that had puzzled even the most advanced alien species for centuries. Emma Reed, the ship's captain, stood at the helm, eyes locked on the star-streaked void beyond, her pulse quickening with every passing moment. This was a journey into the heart of the unknown, a region that held the potential to either secure humanity's future or end it. Her crew, normally composed, was now a bundle of nervous energy. This was the farthest any human had ever ventured, into Tizar space. The data they had on the region was vague at best. No maps, no clear understanding of what dangers lay ahead. Strange gravitational shifts tugged at their ship as they neared, sending ripples through the navigational systems. The view outside was like something from a dream, swirling purple and blue gas clouds, streaks of light, and massive unseen forces bending the stars into impossible shapes. The crew was in awe, but there was no time for wonder. "Brace yourselves," Emma ordered, her voice steady but firm. "This region is uncharted. Stay alert. We don't know what we're walking into." The Elysium moved deeper into the region, and the excitement of the unknown quickly shifted to tension. The ship's sensors were flickering, warning lights blinking erratically. A ripple of unease spread through the crew, the once awe-inspiring sights now tinged with danger. "We are pushing the limits," Harlow, the first officer, muttered, his eyes fixed on the fluctuating displays. "If we go any further, we might never find our way back." Emma didn't reply immediately, her mind already racing ahead. She knew the risks, but she also knew the stakes. Humanity's future rested on this mission. She couldn't afford hesitation. Now, then suddenly a signal broke through the void, a transmission. Strange symbols filled the display, alien in nature, but unmistakably deliberate. It was a message. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer said, voice tight. It's the Tizar." The crew exchanged tense glances. The Tazar, an ancient and highly advanced race known for their superiority, their disdain for lesser species. Emma took a steadying breath and made the decision. "Put it through," she ordered. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of a Tazar leader, a tall, imposing figure, its features angular and sharp, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Humans," the Tazar leader spoke in a deep, resonant voice. "You trespass in Tazar space with technology that is beneath even our lowest caste. You bring with you the relics of a primitive species. Your existence is laughable. Leave now, before you waste further resources." Emma held her ground. Despite the contempt in the alien's voice, she kept her composure. "We're here on a mission," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "We seek to deliver a piece of technology to the Alliance." The Tazar's eyes gleamed with derision. "Technology," it scoffed. "Your kind barely understands what you carry. The engine you offer us is nothing but an artifact, a trinket for our amusement." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving Emma standing in the eerie silence. Her heart pounded. The first encounter was over, and the Tazar had already made their opinion clear. Humanity was insignificant, a laughable species with nothing of true value. But Emma knew better. They hadn't come this far to be dismissed. There was more at stake here than a simple mission. As they prepared to move forward, disaster struck. The Elysium's engines sputtered and the entire ship lurched violently. Warning alarms blared. The crew scrambled, trying to regain control, but it was clear the ship was malfunctioning. The Elysium was dead in space, stranded in the heart of Tazar territory. "What happened?" Emma demanded, her voice tense with authority. "We've lost engine power." "It's a critical failure," Harlow said, eyes wide. "We're stuck. We can't get out." The panic was palpable. Without the engine, they would be sitting ducks for any alien threats. They were in Tazar space, alone, without the means to defend themselves or escape. Emma paced, her mind working in overdrive. They had no choice but to fix it. "Get to the engine room, find out what's wrong, and fix it," she ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. But the crew knew time was running out. The Tazar could come back at any moment, and without power, they were helpless. Tension ran high as they worked frantically to stabilize the ship. Hours passed before the Tazar returned, but this time their attitude had shifted. Their interest was no longer dismissive. It was intrigued. Emma stood at the command center. As a Tazar vessel approached, hovering near the Elysium with ominous grace, the screen flickered to life again, and the same Tazar leader appeared. "We've analyzed your technology," the Tazar said, voice colder, more calculating. "It is not as primitive as we first believed. This engine of yours has hidden properties that could be of great use to us. Perhaps your kind is not as useless as we thought." The realization hit Emma like a cold wave. The Tazar were no longer treating them with disdain. They were interested in the very thing they had once ridiculed. They had begun reverse engineering human technology, and they were doing it with a speed and efficiency that suggested a far more dangerous future for humanity. "They're fascinated by it," Harlow whispered. "They're going to use our tech against us." "Or for them," Emma murmured, staring at the screen, her mind reeling. The Tazar had just unlocked the potential of human ingenuity, something they hadn't even fully understood themselves. The tables had turned, and Emma knew the stakes had just been raised. Humanity had given the Tazar the key to an ancient power, and now they saw humans not as a threat, but as tools. "We've made a mistake," Emma said, her voice low. "This mission could change everything, but at what cost?" The crew was left to grapple with the consequences of their actions. The Tazar had already begun integrating human technology into their systems, and now Emma had to decide whether to work with the aliens or resist them, knowing that either choice could doom them. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in ways no one had expected, and humanity's place in the future was now tied to the whims of the Tsar. The Elysium drifted through the void of space, its hull humming softly, the crew silent in the aftermath of their earlier encounters. The Tsar had been cruelly dismissive, and Emma Reed couldn't shake the lingering weight of their words. She had hoped that humanity's technology would be a beacon for their future, a way to reclaim some semblance of glory, but instead it had become a symbol of their weakness. The Tsar's arrogance, coupled with their apparent disdain, had painted humanity as insignificant, a relic of a forgotten time. Yet the Tsar were intrigued, and that intrigued Emma even more. A chilling realization gripped Emma's heart as the Tsar, with a cold precision, revealed their true intentions. The message came through loud and clear. The Tsar weren't just interested in the human technology to expand their own empire. They intended to wield it to crush weaker civilizations, using humanity's creations to fuel their conquest of the galaxy. The Tsar's supreme arrogance now had a new target: humanity itself. They weren't just looking to enslave weaker species. They would use humanity's own brilliance to dominate the stars. The crew sat frozen, hearing the words in disbelief. "We're nothing but tools to them now," Harlow muttered, his voice full of disbelief and anger. This was never about the technology. It was about subjugation. Emma's knuckles whitened on the armrest of her command chair. The stakes had just been raised higher than anyone could have imagined. The very thing they had brought to the galaxy as a gift, human ingenuity, was being warped into a weapon of mass domination. Her mind raced. Could they stop the Tsar before it was too late? Could they truly risk everything for freedom, or had humanity already lost its soul? As the Elysium limped through the stars, word came in from various colonies, some openly eager for the Tsar's power. These colonies, desperate for survival, saw the Tsar's promises as a way to regain some strength, to secure power in a universe that had forgotten them. But Emma knew better. They had been on the brink of extinction before, and bending the knee to a powerful alien empire would mean their destruction in a different form, this time a slow death of their freedom. "We can't let this happen," Emma said, her voice hard, but her heart torn. "But can we stand against them?" The cracks within humanity's fractured colonies began to show. Some, like New Solaria and Terra Nova, saw the Tsar's offer as a lifeline. They chose to align with the alien overlords, believing that any resistance would be futile. They would accept the technology, the influence, the promise of security. But others, like Unity Colony, fought fiercely to maintain their autonomy, refusing to be ruled by the Tsar, even if it meant the end of their peaceful existence. Emma found herself in the middle of these competing forces, unable to choose between two equally compelling options. Her mind weighed heavily on the future of humanity, and the ethical dilemma tore at her resolve. How could she, as a leader, unite a fractured humanity? How could she ask them to put aside their survival instincts for something greater? It seemed impossible. Every day, the colonies became more divided, and Emma's decisions grew more agonizing. Could they truly rebuild humanity under the Tsar's shadow? Or was it better to risk everything for freedom and independence? The tension within the crew grew palpable. Emma wasn't the only one questioning the path ahead. Lieutenant Marcus, once a loyal ally, began speaking more openly of the Tsar's promise. "We're fighting for the past, Emma," he said one evening, his eyes filled with frustration. "The Tsar have the power. We can join them, or we can die." The crew turned against each other. Emma's closest confidants debated bitterly, some seeing Marcus's point. Perhaps the Tsar were right. Perhaps survival meant bending the knee. But Emma's resolve hardened. She had seen the atrocities humanity could inflict on itself, and she would not let humanity be enslaved again. But just as the Elysium was navigating through the growing storm of division, Marcus made his move. The betrayal was swift and stunning. While Emma and the crew worked to fortify their resistance, Marcus secretly contacted the Tazar, offering human technology in exchange for a position of power within their ranks. He believed the Tazar's might was humanity's only hope. Emma felt the betrayal like a physical blow. Marcus had been her friend, her confidant. How could he turn on them? The others looked to Emma for guidance, but the blow had shattered the trust within the crew. Emma's face hardened with pain, but the fire of leadership still burned within her. She had to make a choice, one that would determine the fate of humanity. With Marcus's treachery exposed, Emma was forced to confront her own demons. She had always carried the burden of Earth's failure, the weight of a species that had once been the mightiest in the galaxy. She had fought for humanity's place in the universe, but now it was no longer about pride or power. It was about survival. Could she continue to resist the Tazar's influence, or was she to embrace the pragmatic choice of joining them for humanity's continued existence? Every decision, every moment weighed heavily on her. The power the Tazar offered was intoxicating. It promised peace and security, but at the cost of freedom, the very essence of what it meant to be human. Emma's mind turned over the consequences of her choices. The galaxy had changed, and so had she. If humanity was to have any future, they needed to unite, not just against the Tazar, but against the very forces that threatened to break them. But the Tazar were growing stronger. The colonies, divided and broken, were being assimilated one by one. Some were turning willingly to the Tazar, aligning themselves with the powerful alien species that offered them a chance at power. Others, like Unity, fought back, but their resistance was weakening. With time running out, Emma knew there was no easy path ahead. She had to make the impossible choice: war or subjugation. The weight of the decision pressed down on her. She turned to her crew, eyes filled with the fire of conviction. "We may not win," she said, her voice a whisper in the tense silence, "but we will never surrender." The galaxy trembled on the brink of war. The Tazar's power was rising, but so too was humanity's resolve. Emma understood now. Their survival wasn't just about the technology they carried, but about what they stood for. The future of humanity would be decided not by the Tazar's might, but by the choices they made now, in the face of their darkest hour. The Tazar Empire had risen to a new height, thanks to the power they had stolen from humanity's ingenuity. They began a ruthless campaign across the galaxy, using the very technology that humanity had once hoped would save them. The Tazar's grip tightened as they subjugated weaker species, bending entire civilizations to their will. Emma and her crew watched from the Elysium, unable to escape the bitter truth. The technology they had brought to the galaxy wasn't a gift of peace. It was a weapon of conquest. The galaxy, which once viewed humanity as insignificant, was now on the brink of being controlled by an empire built on humanity's own creations. Emma stood at the command center, watching as the Elysium drifted silently in the darkness, powerless to stop the Tazar's march. The stakes had shifted, beyond anything she had imagined. The lines between hope and despair blurred as the realization hit humanity's role had changed. Once oppressed, they were now potential oppressors. She clenched her fists, feeling the weight of her leadership. The galaxy's future lay in the hands of a species who had been trampled underfoot for so long, and now they were on the verge of becoming pawns in a much larger game. The tension within the Elysium crew was palpable. The Tazar's dominance was undeniable. Some crew members, seeing no way out, debated surrendering to the Tazar's offer of power, an option they'd never imagined considering. Others, including Emma, stood resolute in their belief that surrender was not the answer. The moral dilemma was tearing at their unity. Would they fight back, risking total annihilation, Or would they cooperate to secure humanity's survival? Emma knew the choice was hers, but the stakes had never been higher. The weight of her leadership threatened to crush her. How could she make the decision that would shape the future of all humanity? The debate was reaching a boiling point when the news came. Lieutenant Marcus, once her most trusted ally, had defected to the Tsar. He had betrayed them. Emma's world shattered. In that moment, Marcus, whom she had considered family, had aligned himself with the Tsar, believing that their might was humanity's only hope. The crew was in shock, some paralyzed by the betrayal, others furious. Emma's heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest, but she couldn't afford the luxury of grief. They needed to act. The Tsar were coming. Emma's mind raced as she confronted the deepest of her fears. Was Marcus right? Were the Tsar too powerful to fight? Was humanity's only hope to survive at any cost? Could she lead them down a path that would keep their integrity intact? Or would they have to compromise everything they believed in just to stay alive? Her gut told her that to align with the Tsar was to lose everything, humanity's identity, their soul. But survival was a force of nature. Survival was the instinct that had kept them alive for centuries. Was that enough to justify bending the knee? The crew of the Elysium was divided. Some saw Marcus's choice as a pragmatic move. The Tsar offered power and security, something that humanity had lacked for so long. Others, though, could not accept the idea of becoming slaves again, even under a new name. Emma stood alone, torn between two impossible choices. Every minute, feeling like an eternity, the Tsar's reign over the galaxy seemed unshakable. Could humanity fight against them? Could they possibly stand up against such overwhelming force? Was it worth the price? With the Tsar's influence growing, the Elysium set its course toward the heart of their empire. Emma had no other choice now but to face the Tsar in battle. The fight wasn't just for survival, it was for the very soul of humanity. But even as she prepared her crew for the oncoming storm, a shadow of doubt hung over her. What would humanity become if they won? The final battle came fast and furious. The Elysium wasn't designed for a war like this. Its systems were barely functional after so many skirmishes, its hull scarred from constant battles. Yet it was all they had. Emma led the charge, her resolve steeled by the weight of her choices. The Tsar's capital loomed ahead, a fortress of unimaginable power. The Elysium could either shatter it or be destroyed trying. The crew was ready, or so they thought. As the Elysium descended upon the Tsar's heart, the battle began. The Tsar unleashed their might, their warships swarming like locusts, their weapons lighting up the sky. It felt as though the entire galaxy was about to collapse under the weight of the war. Emma's heart hammered in her chest as she barked orders to her crew, directing every maneuver, every strike, knowing that failure meant the end. She watched as her crew fought with everything they had, each one of them pushing their limits. Knowing that if they didn't succeed here, humanity's future would be extinguished forever. The battle raged on, with the Elysium taking heavy damage. But Emma had one last play, one chance to turn the tide. She had a plan to turn the Tsar's greatest weapon against them. Using a combination of human ingenuity and the technology they had developed, she instructed the crew to target the central power grid that fed the Tsar's empire. It was a suicide mission. There was no guarantee they would make it out alive. Emma's heart tightened with every passing moment as she realized the sacrifice that would be required. She had already lost so much. Would this be her final act? The crew worked feverishly, racing against the clock as the Tsar closed in, their defenses overwhelming. Tension and fear gripped everyone aboard the Elysium. Emma knew this was their only shot, but what would it cost them? Would they succeed? Or would their failure bring the galaxy to the edge of annihilation? As the power grid came into range, Emma's breath caught in her throat. She knew the moment they struck, There would be no turning back. The plan succeeded, but not without consequences. The Elysium took a fatal hit as it delivered the final blow to the Tsar's central systems. The ship was irreparably damaged, its hull collapsing under the strain. Emma stayed behind, ensuring the destruction was complete. The sacrifice was her own. Her final act ensured the destruction of the Tsar's empire, but it came at the cost of humanity's last great hope. As the Elysium crumbled, Marcus, who had betrayed her, redeemed himself. He helped Emma in her final moments, guiding the ship toward its last mission. Together, they ensured the Tsar's reign ended. The galaxy would be free, but at what cost? The Elysium was gone. The crew was scattered. Emma was gone. But humanity had won. The Tsar Empire crumbled, its once glorious power shattered. A victory that had come at a tremendous cost left the galaxy with a mixture of relief and sorrow. The Elysium was gone, but humanity had earned a chance at survival. Emma's death marked the end of an era and the beginning of another. Now, with the galaxy in ruins and the Tsar defeated, humanity faced the daunting task of rebuilding. The battle had been won, but the cost was heavy. Emma's crew, those who survived, were left to piece together the fragments of a new future. They were a symbol of resilience. They would rebuild, or they would fall trying. The galaxy lay in tatters, and the road ahead was uncertain. But for the first time in a long while, there was hope. Humanity's future had been secured, not by the power of empires, but by the power of ingenuity, sacrifice, and a relentless will to survive. The Tsar had fallen, and the galaxy would never forget the humans who had risen up and changed the course of history. The Elysium drifted through the void, the silence of space heavy around Emma and her crew. The Tsar Empire, once an overwhelming force, had fallen. The echoes of its collapse spread through the galaxy like a shockwave, leaving the remnants of their fleet scattered and in disarray. Despite the destruction of their enemies, the victory felt hollow. Humanity had survived, but the price had been steep. Emma felt the weight of the cost pressing down on her shoulders, her mind heavy with the uncertainty of what came next. The Tsar had been vanquished, but the galaxy had been left scarred. Humanity's future hung in the balance. Once feared, the Tsar had shown no mercy, and the consequences of their reign were still being felt. Emma had led her crew through the impossible, but now she faced the grim reality. Victory was only the beginning. The galaxy was fractured. The remnants of the Tsar Empire were like a broken glass scattered across the stars. No one knew how it would be pieced together again. Emma's crew, battered but triumphant, had become the symbol of humanity's resilience. But what did that resilience mean in a galaxy so torn by war? The cost of survival, Emma realized, was something no one could fully grasp yet. As Emma and her crew returned to the human colonies, they were hailed as heroes, their names etched into the history of a fractured galaxy. The celebrations were intense, the cheers of the people a chorus of victory. But even in the face of their accomplishments, there was a deeper, quieter understanding among Emma and her crew. This was not the end. They had fought against an empire that sought to control them, but now they faced a new, more complex challenge: rebuilding. The war had ended, but the peace that followed was fragile. The Tsar had been defeated, but the wounds they had left behind would take time to heal, and in the distance, new threats loomed. Emma could see it in the faces of her crew. They were tired, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity's place in the galaxy was uncertain. Earth, once the heart of a thriving empire, had been reduced to a forgotten relic, a symbol of what had once been. The human colonies, scattered across distant stars, had struggled to survive on their own, isolated from one another and from Earth itself. With the Tsar's fall, the galaxy was left in chaos. Emma and her crew understood that they would have to fight once more, not just for survival, but for a place in the universe. Earth was no longer the dominant force it had once been, and the colonies would have to forge their own path forward. Would humanity continue to evolve on the fringes of the galaxy, or could they find a way to reclaim their place in the stars? Emma couldn't help but wonder if Earth could ever rise again, or if humanity was destined to live out its days in the shadows of the cosmos. Emma was offered leadership, a chance to guide the fractured colonies toward unity. The weight of the decision was almost unbearable. She had led her crew through unimaginable odds, and now she had to decide whether she could lead a divided humanity to a brighter future. Her heart ached with the burden of the decision. Humanity had been liberated from tyranny, but at what cost? The scars of the Tsar's rule ran deep, and now Emma had to find a way to heal those wounds. Could she guide them to rebuild what had been lost, or would her efforts only deepen the divisions that threatened to tear them apart? The future of humanity was no longer clear-cut. It was a tangled web of uncertainty, hope, and fear. Emma's role in this new era was just beginning, but she knew she would face challenges greater than anything she had ever encountered. As Emma stared out into the vast expanse of space, she knew that humanity's path forward was shrouded in uncertainty. The Tsar had been defeated, but the cost of that victory was steep. The galaxy was fractured, and humanity had to find a way to rebuild from the ashes. There would be new challenges ahead: political strife, power struggles, and the looming fear of new threats emerging from the ruins of the old empire. But in the quiet moments, Emma could sense the flicker of hope. Humanity had survived, and that survival had become a testament to their strength. Yet, even as she held on to that hope, Emma could not ignore the weight of the decision still to come. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but humanity had proven time and time again that they could rise above the impossible. Now, the question was, could they rise to the occasion again? Emma's gaze lingered on the stars, the dark expanse beyond them, full of possibility and danger. She knew that the true struggle for humanity's future had only just begun. The Tsar had fallen, but their empire had left a deep scar on the galaxy. Humanity would have to chart a new course, one that could restore their place in the stars or see them vanish into obscurity. Emma's mind raced with the enormity of the task ahead. The road to peace was long, and the future was uncertain. But one thing was clear: humanity was not done yet. They had earned their place in the galaxy, and now they had to prove they could keep it. The final thought echoed in Emma's mind as she stared out into the vastness of the galaxy. The future was unknown, but humanity had always found a way to adapt, to survive, to rise, and that was all Emma needed to hold on to as she led humanity into the next chapter of their uncertain journey. The storm had passed, but the work had just begun. What lay ahead, Emma didn't know, but for the first time in a long while, she was ready to face it.